Hello and welcome to, I think this is episode 6 of Web3T, hosted by VanEck. My name's JP Lee. I work at VanEck, product manager. I am joined today by Matt Bartlett, per usual, the head of NFT community and Web3 at VanEck. And we have a very special guest, and you will not believe where he's from. He's from the future.
That's right.
Uh, he is from New Zealand. This is Dorian from Sylo and The Seekers, coming to us live from across the world. I mean, this is amazing what technology can accomplish today. So, very excited to be here. Dorian, thank you very much for joining us today. I'm speaking for myself and Bartlett. We are huge fans of Sylo and The Seekers, and full disclosure, we do own some Seekers in our wallets. So, very happy you're here. Very grateful. I don't. Do you have any opening comments you want to say? Any kind of grand entrance for
Yeah,
us?
yeah, man. Thanks. Appreciate it. Excited to be here. Yeah, looking forward to having a bit of a yarn, and diving
What was that? A
diving
yarn?
into it.
Is
Yeah,
that a
a
yarn?
bit of a yarn. Yeah, yarn.
Okay, cool. Very nice. Okay, well, why don't we just get right into it, and why don't you tell us a little about, what your background is, what the team's doing, and what you guys are working on.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So myself, I came from quite a strong digital consulting background back in the day. So like I graduated university, started up a company to help companies market through the Facebooks of the world. Through that process myself, I got a pretty good insight into everything that goes on behind the scenes in terms of data capture, data harvesting, centralized models. On the back of that, went on a bit of a mission to build out communication software that lets you do what you want to do online without that whole nefarious data harvesting centralized middle layer.
Nice.
And that sort of founded the genesis of Sylo, which is a project developing a decentralized communications protocol. So we've been building that as a company for the better part of half a decade now. But we more recently launched the Seekers project, an NFT project, as a push to really gamify the rollout of the node infrastructure for that comms network, so that we can really engage a broader audience, bring entertainment into play, and really push this stuff towards mass adoption so that we can start getting these decentralized comms protocols, which quite honestly are just aligned better to user behavior and user control than exploitative behavior, and bring that into play so that these budding Web3 projects, and as Web3 evolves, it brings more value aligned, more user control, more user directed software into the hands of people.
So when you say, we hear decentralized all the time, like there's communication systems already, right? Like we're on Skype right now, right? We're in Discord. How is Sylo different when you say decentralized? What does that mean
So it
when you're
means,
comparing it to Skype?
yeah. So like we actually have a setup so that community can run the infrastructure. So you think in terms of a traditional model, it's based around a centralized server infrastructure run by that entity powering the network. But what comes along with that is a lot of, I guess, not just capability, but desire, and for these entities to figure out how to use that information flow to benefit the business of the company or their partners. With the network set up in a decentralized fashion, what we enable is the users themselves to run these nodes, and provide the comms relay to people using the network. So you can promote it publicly for the community to use, or you can actually connect your direct friends or contacts to hook up and leverage off your nodes. So you kind of know the service provider is not someone that's set up filtering all this information. It's a global community powering this network in a truly decentralized fashion. So the big piece of that as well is the incentivization. So, the concept of that's all well and good. Do we want people to jump in, for the good of it and run a node? But the incentivization component allows people to participate in the economics of that model. So we've got an incentivization component hooked into the Sylo token, which means if you're providing that resource to the network, you can actually participate in the economies and get rewarded for providing resource to that network. And it creates a bit of an inverse model where, as the network grows in a traditional model, it just equals more cost and tougher for performance for the network to scale. As more users join a decentralized network in this setup, it actually increases the power of the network as more people jump on and start hosting nodes all over the world. So there's a couple of angles there. There's the truly community run element, but there's also the scalability efficiencies that come into play there.
So Dorian, I guess just for our audience, so we have the Sylo app, which you get on Android, iOS. It's wallet to wallet, payments and comms, text. Correct me too if I'm wrong. Text, phone call, video chat. You could buy crypto on the app as well. Is that right?
Yeah, and the smart wallet. So I think of the smart wallet as sort of just an implementation of the protocol. So we've built this out to provide comms, and we've plugged it into the Sylo smart wallet, which is Messenger combined with a crypto wallet. That's sort of fully featured from that side as well. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then, so when we're thinking about running a node, I'm assuming this is like a proof of stake model. Folks are staking Sylo, or maybe you could just talk to us about what's involved with running a node. I mean, just in general.
Yeah, so we've designed the nodes to be run as part of your seeker. So seekers owners will be able to host and run nodes, and it's going to be run through a staking mechanism where you'll stake Sylos into the seekers to be able to then advertise your node and get traffic running through that. Gotcha.
So maybe like what are the seekers? Maybe let's break that down. Transition to the avatar, or the fun part. I guess I'd say.
Yeah. yeah, absolutely. So seekers are, if you're not familiar with them, they're metaverse-ready robots, and they're designed to power communications and trade across what we focus on, which is the open metaverse. So you've got the metaverse, Zuckerberg's project coming out, which they're going to be developing their own immersive world. But what we heavily play into with the Seekers project is the open metaverse, and we've positioned these robots as an entertainment property to work, explore, and find projects that are value aligned around building the open metaverse through open, decentralized, and community-oriented technologies. And these will be involved with these budding projects and these developments. One key project we're working very closely with is Fluff World. If you've been following them as well, you'll see the Seekers quite heavily built into the lore within those projects. And as those develop, they'll be notable, engaged characters within those worlds that are building out. But they also provide a heavy utility layer where they will be driving underneath the hood the communications components across these projects that come out. So there's two elements to them.
Gotcha.
One question I had, because like I said, I got a couple seekers, and there's different levels, right? Like there's the common ones where there's minted 44,000 of these things, which is a lot.
Just under 48,000, yeah.
Okay, so it's 47 something. Okay, so but there's different levels, right? You've got like, and I don't know the names off the top of my head, but it's like you've got basically common, rare, and super rare, right? Now, is there a difference in the utility? Like, are the super rares better at running nodes than the regulars, or is that just like because they look really cool? Your video went away. It'll come back though.
Yes. Sorry, mate. I just had a call coming in. You got me back.
Yeah, it's fine. So, like, is there a difference? Because in NFTs, a lot of it's like, oh, I got the rare one, like, right? But for some of them, it's like it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really do anything different. Like for a lot of these like generic PFP NFT projects. This BTCH Horn is asking the same things. Like, so what are the rarity? Is that going to affect the actual utility in ways that we don't know about right now? Is it going to be able to run it more? Can you just speak on that?
Yeah. So when it comes to the infrastructure side of things, that needs to be relatively generic, because these seekers are actually nodes running a comms network that needs to power a global communications network. So the number of NFTs is going to have an actual function. So every seeker is able to run a node, but where the difference is going to come in is on the project rollout and the entertainment side for these seekers. So you'll have the standard ability to run nodes across the board, because we need as many people as possible to run these things to have the most efficient performing network. But when it comes down to the rarities and the attributes, that'll come into play on the trait layer as we build these into game environments, as we interact with them. But the team's also exploring unique aspects around running nodes, such as delegation and the ability to hook in or maybe provide broader spread, or maybe have priority display to advertising to others to hook into the network. So, for example, the ability to be sort of priority listed when someone's searching for a node to find. There's elements like that that can be brought in on the UX layer. But from a core functionality point of view, it's very important for us to make sure that all of these guys can provide utility to the network, because we need this thing to grow to millions of users as the target.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask that, like, the altered state machine, David McDonald, the founder of that project, said the other day, we probably going to have 1 million brains at some point, right? With Fluff World, you've got eggs. There's going to be some sort of breeding mechanism, right? We're gonna have more avatars in this future verse in their case. Is that what your goal is? I mean, there's going to be a million nodes out there, various characters that are supporting the network. What does that kind of look like?
So the Seekers are an infrastructure cap. So that 48,000, that is how many nodes you're going to have in existence. But that can facilitate quite a lot. So, like, for example, the Sylo Smart Wallet, we've got around 500,000 users on that, and that's facilitated through less than 500 nodes. So you can kind of get a perspective on what can be provided through that. But that piece there is set in stone in terms of the infrastructure, and that was why it was quite important for us to go for a good size collection. We ended up putting it out through community determined supply, so it could have been lower, it could have been higher, which would have actually had structural implications on the network, but it went so well. We've got a large number of these, which is a great vouch for where we can go with this network, because we've been, as I say, we've been building this for a few years, and we've pushed the angle looking for people that are interested in supporting this technology, decentralization, privacy, through the smart wallet. And we've reached a good point. There's around 500,000 users on that, but for us to activate and break out into the multi-millions and get a much wider audience, that was an important point for us to really get in on the entertainment side and get engagement through this NFT play with the Seekers, to open that up and start growing that world, and start feeding that into other environments to really break out and drive that figure larger.
Yeah, what the size of the mint was kind of ridiculous. Like, right, like 7,000 something, things were minted, and I minted, right, like, and I know Bartlett minted too that day, and it was really just like, it was very smooth, and it was very easy to do, and I'm sure under the hood, I'm not like a tech guy, so like for me to go on and just be bam, got him, it was very comforting and easy to do.
Especially
and
for
I know
many. It's unbelievable.
And there's been other projects out there that have not, done that, right? Like, what was it, the Other Side Mint a couple months ago, like a month and a half ago, it blew up the ETH network, and they burned. There was like millions of dollars in ETH burned that didn't need to be burned, right? Because so why was it so good? Why did it work so well?
Well, you touched on a good point there as well. From the outside, it always looks, perfect and smooth. On the inside, all hands on deck going for it. I think our guys did an amazing job. We did benefit from working with like the Fluff guys, for example, that had done a couple of drops before this, taking a lot of learnings from what could and could go wrong. So we over provisioned from that point of view as well. But the reality in doing a community determined supply mechanic with it burning down is we didn't actually know how many of these things would end up with. It was literally determined by community interest. So we could have ended up with 10K, we could have ended up with 50K. We obviously ended up with a higher spectrum. But yeah, the guys put a lot of work. They talked to the right people that had done these drops before to get everything in line. And it thankfully, it went well. It wasn't without issues. There were definitely fires being put out on the backside with the guys. A couple of issues with things like the whitelist spot discount claims and bits and pieces. But we just fortunately had an amazing team that could hustle and grab onto these and roll with it. So it's part skill, part planning, part luck, and part just sweat, blood, and tears. Just because there's still new mechanics to come in with every one of these drops.
We got a good question here from BTC Hornet, and this is great. This is a question I had too. Like, so you're setting up a node, running a node. Like, what does that mean mechanically, right? Like, if I have some seekers, they're not running nodes yet. what is that going to look like operationally for me to do it? Like, is it going to be like a year lockup? Is it going to be a lockup period? Anything you could tell us about what that's going to look like from a user
Yeah,
perspective?
I actually wish I could show the dashboard because we've just been getting the UX designs off the press, but the content team will probably kill me. So I won't pull that up. But the basic concept behind it is flexibility and running these nodes where you're able to stake into them, get visibility to the network, have people connect to your node to provide services, but we're not going to have extensive lockups around that. Some of the final mechanics TBD, which the team will release on the technical side, but we want to make it very flexible where you can move in, provide resources, but you can also move out so that people aren't locked up for extensive periods of time. You may end up looking at like a 30-day epoch cycle where you can sort of come on. But the main thing with nodes is persistent uptime as well, which we have to navigate. So like if you're on, like, and that's one of the issues with mobile provision as well. Like if you're hosting a node that provides resource to the network and you're not persistently online, it means people's communications won't reach to the other side, which is a big issue. So we're just juggling with that in terms of what the flexibility can and can't be, because obviously making sure the network works is the primary component, but then flowing through to making sure it's more flexible than a 12-month lockup where you don't have a choice on that side. But so it's going to be focused around user experience and flexibility as much as possible within the parameters of a network that needs to perform and weigh up against its centralized counterpart solutions.
So the learning curve for someone new to the space, let's say the Seekers was their first mint, right? I mean, the learning curve shouldn't be too extreme to get people on board and participating and enjoying really the whole experience.
100%. And there's multiple layers to the Seekers, from an interesting NFT that you can relate with, engage with. These things will be brought into real game environments, so fully rigged gaming assets. And then there's the network side, where if you want to participate and provide that infrastructure because you want to see, better Web3 tech, or you're just actually looking at it from the participation in the community and the reward side, that piece. But our focus is making sure that it's not overly technical and complicated. Like if you've tried to spin up a node currently on the existing Sylo network, it is quite techy. You almost have to be a developer to get that rolling. So when this releases, it's going to be a step better in terms of kind of UX and getting a wider group of skill set into that. And then progressively, we want to get it to the point where it's click and play, super simple, and it's going to be multi-phase to move through. But that usability is one of our large focuses.
Are there any, like, okay, look, so you hear nodes, you're mining Bitcoin with your computer, you have to buy a $3,000, $8,000, $10,000 GPU to do that. Are there going to be hardware requirements for people who are running nodes, or can you do it from your mobile phone? Like, or is it in the middle somewhere?
We get those questions a lot, and it's quite funny. I throw it at developers, and like, so what are the requirements? And like, to be honest, like we don't know what the limits are yet. Like, try run it on an old machine, and like they've played around with it, and it can run fine on. Maybe if you got something that's a decade old, you won't get anywhere. But it's quite broad in terms of performance. We've got guys running these things on Raspberry Pis, through to full devices, through to hooking into AWS networks to get going. But as we roll out, I think the guys will get some consistent specifications to put out, but it is going to be quite broad in terms of what you can run these things on. So don't feel like you need to go out and buy a mining rig. These will be able to be run from personal devices.
Shit. I'm spinning my wheel. I'm like,
yeah. So look, I want to do two things. Let's do one of the trivia questions real quick. We got some people online. So we have a microsite for our NFT, the VanEck Community NFT. It's www.vaneck.com/NFT community. The question is, there is a cryptex at the top of that website. What does it spell? First person to respond to JP in the chat wins it. We'll get you an NFT by the end of the weekend or so. So I just wanted to insert that. Well, maybe kind of changing the direction a little bit. One thing that I found really interesting in going to the Fluff Social last week at Spin in New York, there's a lot of talk about lore and the importance of lore. And I mean, there are folks being hired, and maybe you have them on your team, Dorian. That is their job, to come up with lore and this this creative world and a storyline. Number one, like, why is that so important? I just kind of like, what is its role, right? Like how do you think of it, and do you think that other projects, again, I see it, even like Moon Runners, I mean, the hot NFT of the week or whatever it is, I see sort of mini lore on Twitter, but it's not like what I'm seeing from the Seekers, from Fluff World and ASM, right? I mean, let's just talk more about that for a moment.
An immersive storyline is very, very important, because what we're building, us and with this group of companies we're working very closely with, is not just a PFP project. We're building a meta world and a game, and part of every game is storyline, is lore, is immersive experience. So each of these pieces that are coming out of this ecosystem have long-term roadmaps in terms of being part of a bigger entertainment project and gamification. So the storyline is actually forming the foundation that's going to drive a lot of that development for years to come, and come out into multiple properties that people engage with. It's not a flash in the pan. So for people to really invest, relate to the characters, see where it's going, decide which of these ones is going to represent themselves, not just be your Twitter profile picture, but be the representative that you relate to, that represents you within these games that are going to be rolling out in these immersive environments. There needs to be a lot more relatability. You're going to decide what side of the fight you're going to be on. Whether you're a seeker, whether you're a fluff, whether you're a party bear, whether you're going to relate with the goblins, which is an emerging piece as well.
That's not the goblin. That's not the WTF goblins right now. I know. I just want to make that clear, right? You guys, because those guys came out of nowhere, right? Like those guys came out of nowhere. Now they're like whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, that's a very interesting one. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes when that project emerges, because that's been in development for a long time actually, since the same time frames as Seekers. But it's just they're really laying the groundwork on that piece. But yeah, it needs to be deep. It needs to have deep roots. It needs to and have legs in it, because we're building for the long term here. I know we're in a interesting phase right now. We've done a few launches. We're in absolute build mode now, and we've got multi-year roadmaps with these things. So it needs longevity for people to really get immersed in it.
Well, so when I think about the future verse, I'm going to use that for a moment. We've got this infrastructure around payments and comms. You've got Brains, you've got Atom Car Club, you've got Burrows, Metaverse Land. What's missing? Like what like, you don't have to talk about a project coming, but like what is missing? But I know we have bridges like to Ripple and other tokens coming down the line to make that user adoption, I guess, a little better. But I'm just kind of wondering what are we lacking right now? I feel like we have everything, right?
In terms of the components and the concepts, there's a lot of it there. You might see a couple new elements emerge that are in the cooker, but it's really focused on bringing it together and building and starting to bring the next phases of progress to the stuff now. Like you guys have seen you've seen the NFT, PFP, OpenSea layer, and the whole machine's now focused on starting to bring this to the next stage. You've had a taste of it with the burrows that come out. It's really advancing that and starting to build these immersive environments and these immersive worlds, bringing in the technology layers that are actually going to form the foundations of this for years to come, and get rolling. You're not going to see a raft of additional, PFP drops. You're actually going to start seeing, genuine development progress coming out of this ecosystem, because you've got a lot of talented people in build mode now.
Yeah, that's a theme for sure now.
So like one thing that I mean, there's airdrops all the time, right? Like, are you planning airdrops and stuff of Sylo for people who have Seekers? I mean, is there anything like that to incentivize people to own Seekers, or are you just like happy with how many people have them right now? Anything you can say about that?
And just to add on to that, Dorian, Sylo's been out for a while too. I feel like, right, the token. Maybe educate us on like what was the initial rollout of that token like, right? I mean, where did it start? Who had it? The stakeholders. I'd be curious about that.
Yeah, sure. So on the, I'm sure you've noticed on the Seekers side that these guys have turned up with interesting, skins, traits, items in the backpacks, all that kind of stuff. And rest assured, there's a plan for almost every element around that. But as you can imagine, it's a large collection, so there's going to be a process to that. But the team is very, very focused on rewarding and coming to the table for the existing supporters. So you'll be, if you're in the community, you'll be well happy with how that all plays out. There's definite plans there as well. So I'd take notice of the different elements that the Seekers have come back with as well, and you can sort of start to draw your own conclusions as to where some of that stuff might go. Some of it more, along lines of what you mentioned around rewards, but others in terms of what will come into play with how they interact within these more immersive environments, and who they interact with, how they interact, what characteristics they display, what you can do with them from that side. In terms of the Sylo piece, so the project genesis of that was actually back in 2017. So we launched our first product there, which was sort of our version 1 build. We built that in unison with a guy called Adam Fisk. He was the original. Do you remember LimeWire, the music sharing service?
Oh yeah.
It was like Napster and LimeWire.
Oh yeah.
So he was the original like P2P guy that sort of built the genesis of their platform. We worked with him to build out version 1 of the solution, which was actually targeted at professionals that needed confidentiality. They didn't want their sensitive client comms stored in the cloud. And then from that, we started developing out the protocol. And the plan behind the incentivized network, which required a token, came into play, which we built out over the following few years. There was initial private drop of that token back in 2018, and then the token got listed in 2020, and forming the genesis of that coming into market. And then that token's playing heavily into the rollout of the incentivized network and the Seekers project.
Yep. So, I mean, a lot of these tokens that you get, what can you do with the token besides, hold it and try to sell it or whatever? Like, what's the utility of the actual token? Like, are you using it to stake within the Sylo network, or what's going on there?
Yeah, so the mechanics of it is heavily built into the incentivized layer. So, like, if you haven't had a look at it yet, we've got a really good Git book, which gives you the blow-by-blow of exactly how the token integrates into the network, how the staking mechanism is going to work. And how the rewards will get paid out. It's based on a micropayments service layer, where it's essentially a lottery. We provide services to the network. You host a node. You provide services to the network based on the network traffic that moves through your node. You go on the lottery to win tickets that comps you in Sylo token to generate the economy that moves around there as well. We do have liquidity mining programs as well. If you want to sort of get in the mix and you've got a holder there, if you can go to dashboard.sylo.io if you want to check that piece out as well. And then as we move forward as well, we'll be bringing the token into play on some more kind of front-faced layer elements.
So one of the questions I had too when we started this conversation by talking about Skype and Discord and stuff like that. So, like, do you consider this Sylo network and the comms system a direct competitor to something like Skype? That's the first question. Do you see that as coming in the next 5 years, I guess? Maybe not today, maybe, but in 5 years?
We're focused more on the protocol layer. So, like, if you look at a product like the Sylo Smart Wallet, which is kind of like a decentralized messenger, you could look at that and go, oh, yeah, I guess that's competitive with Skype. But that is very focused on also bringing into play non-custodial asset holding. So you can hold your NFTs, you can hold your crypto assets within the same context. But what we're very focused on is enabling wallet-to-wallet communication with the protocol. So the ability for people to connect direct wallet to wallet, to connect based on similar asset holdings, be that crypto or be that NFTs, to be able to create connections directly, both from a direct connection, but also from a broadcasting mentality. There's a lot of focus going there as well, where you can communicate out to holders of certain NFTs, for example.
Wow,
which is huge. Quite a powerful component. But our focus here, like, think of the smart wallet just as an implementation of the protocol. We're now working with a range of good partners, like Fluff, for example, to get this network established within their environments, to expose that and to enable them to build features that are aligned with their open development philosophy. So, you've got, we're working with people that genuinely believe the open metaverse is the better way to go. And the primary basis behind a lot of that is the users participating in the value creation, participating in the growth of the network, having full control and custody of their assets. They can pull them in, they can pull them out at any time. It's not these restringent walled gardens. And just a really important piece of an open metaverse is communications. And if you're sort of plugging in a centralized communications framework into those worlds, it kind of defeats the purpose. So what we have here is a genuinely community-run infrastructure that can plug in and let these guys build what they want and add the UX layers on top of that. So we're very much on the protocol level. What people build on it from a product point of view, you can let the imagination run wild.
So do you see this kind of ethos in direct competition or at odds with the Facebook Meta, or what other centralized versions of whatever metaverse that's, or like Fortnite even today, right? Which is a closed, or Call of Duty or whatever, right? Like there's all these and I think a lot of it's happening because I'm a big gamer, right? So the gaming community, it's all you can't take your Fortnite guy to Call of Duty to whatever, right? And that's a very simple way to think about it. But it's because it's walled, right? It's closed. Do you think of yourself philosophically at odds with that kind of ideation of technology?
Absolutely. I mean, and in my mind, and probably a lot of the guys we work with as well, it's are we racing towards utopia or dystopia with this metaverse stuff? Very much so. But, it's also the concept of, to us, building one company, building the metaverse is almost laughable. Like a group of people in a room in one company coming up with what the metaverse should be for the whole world is a bit bonkers, really. And it's the result you're going to get is going to be very, very interesting. I'm sure they'll create some cool stuff. They'll get engagement. It'll be innovative technology. But you'll see with what's happening on the other side of the table, it's about bringing all of this in, with the NFT economy and this metaverse emergence. It's activated creatives all over the place. You've got 1, 2, 3-man bands through to large companies and projects just coming up with insane creativity, and it's about bringing in and including that creativity in an open manner to craft the future. You'll see with our group of companies, we're not one big entity. You've got Futureverse, which is developing, but that is a whole range of amazing companies feeding into that with a whole bunch of different expertise, elements, traction, communities, ideas, concepts, philosophies to produce together what the open metaverse should be. And it's not all of us know, there's not a Bible, this is what it should be. It's the contribution of open development that will create that environment that everyone shares value in. So it's just two fundamentally different concepts. And you sort of got to decide, which one's going to be better at the end of the day. But I don't even think it's for that as much. I think it's going to become a better product and a better experience when you've got a whole industry contributing to this as opposed to one company.
Somebody asked a big BTC Hornet MVP for questions.
Listen, BTC Hornet's on all of the AMAs. He's got great questions. He's a VanEck NFT community member. Let him go for it.
So he asked a question. I'll read it from him. So can Meta or Apple create a Sylo-like network on its own overnight with a bunch of resources? Or does Sylo provide Fluff World an asset that's not easily duplicated? Right? And one of the questions that you hear if you're private equity or VC, it's well, what happens when Google does this on their own? They're going to buy you, or they're just going to make their own? Are you thinking about that?
The main piece there is economics, right? So those guys are all based on, they are about getting traffic, getting eyeballs, and monetizing and extracting value out of those eyeballs. It's a fundamental part of their business model, and they're driven to make profit through that mechanic. But we, the Sylo network, the company behind it, we don't have the ability to see or monitor the traffic that flows through that and to extract information and monetize that data. So it's just purely, the model of it's purely not that interesting to these big guys. They've got users on their centralized networks that they just extract value out of, and they're going to push that to as far as they can, as long as people use it. What we're promoting is distribution of the economics, the ability for projects to integrate these features that users can use, users can run themselves, users can participate in the economics of it. And that's that's something that these companies are quite allergic to. For them, it's like, the data and the traffic and the value is ours. It's like you see with with Meta, right? They came out, they're gonna look at a 50%, fee on royalties, because they're coming from a world where that's a discount. Usually they get 100%. Where it's like the philosophy of, everyone that's sort of emerging in our space is, well, no, like a 5% clip's a lot. That's shared value. That's enough to take away from the users. It should even be smaller, so that you can spread the economics. So I don't think it's as much a technical challenge as a business model alignment challenge. But at the same time, they could pick up and use these protocols if they want to provide it for the end users. I mean, you might get to the point where people have had enough. And they're like, well, the concept of you owning these user data pipelines is just ridiculous. You need to go with these technologies, and they start adopting and developing them. But I think we're a little while away from their mentality changing towards actually giving value to the users that use the network that provide it to them, as opposed to trying to extract value from those users. And that's the major hurdle in my mind.
Yeah. So I think that the main difference between the open and closed is really just built around community and like you said, aligning incentives. We did a Twitter Spaces earlier this morning, and someone had asked, why do we have to have so many tokens? Why does every project have to have its own token? And my answer to that was, if you have a project with a Genesis asset and they want to give you an airdrop of tokens or let you have a claim, they're basically allowing you to participate in the success of that project long term, right? You have a stake in it. You have ownership. Besides just that one asset, you have some skin in the game in terms of a token. But is that a fair answer, Dorian? Or maybe what would be your answer to that? How would you address it?
I think that's a fundamental point, but that's just sort of just one element of it. But that's what that's what's so inspiring for me in terms of this model. Like, yes, there's a lot of BS and people, more tokens, but the concept of, these Genesis NFT collections or these Genesis tokens is it does give people the opportunity to participate in the value that gets created as these things build, as opposed to waiting for the value to be built by a restricted group of people. Then, in a company model, they'll do that and then they'll IPO, and then that's the point, larger masses get to enter when most of the value is already being created. Yes, there's that element, but there's other factors that come into play. Like, some of these protocols and projects need tokens to fit into the tokenomics and the economic value creation. Like, for example, the Sylo network. We've got a network out there. People are running these nodes. It's not incentivized. They're doing it out of enthusiasm and esotericism. You know what I mean? We need to bring economics into it so that there's an economy that is rewarding the effort that's being put in order for it to become A, sustainable, and B, to grow and attract others to it. And that's where the crypto token comes to play in terms of Sylo. So there's actually a viable piece there. But there's a lot of BS, so to speak, but there are genuine uses for these tokens in certain use cases as well. So you sort of just need to filter through that.
JP, do you want to do, why don't you see what other questions we have? I just want to give a few updates on the community NFT real quick, give folks a break on this initial topic. One trivia question, another trivia question that whoever wants to answer. Alexander Hamilton's famous duel took place on what date? We want the date, including the year. So put that in the chat. We'll get you an NFT. We'll let JP decide who wins that one. So just a couple notes for our community. We've got a community newsletter, hopefully coming out next week. That's going to include a Substack that I'm writing on NFT Alpha, which actually includes a bit more detail on the Seekers project as sort of an introduction. We also have a standalone piece that we've written about Web3, and we used Seekers Sylo as sort of the example project. So hopefully it's something that's relatable that you can share with friends and family, right? Our next event, we're planning for September 13th at our New York City home office. We're partnering with a project called Afropolitan, so more details there. And then JP is avidly working with the NYSE and NASDAQ on potentially getting 2 bell ringing ceremonies in New York between now and the end of the year, and we'll invite some some of our community members as well, which would be a lot of fun. There is a contest right now. If you go to that microsite that I mentioned earlier, there is a puzzle in place. Many of our community members have pointed this out on Twitter. In fact, I believe there's one member who's already solved all 6 of the 8 questions. And unfortunately for that person, we're probably not going to share that puzzle until next week over a YouTube show. And we'll probably either tweet one or have another creative way for you to figure out what that question is. But give it a look, and we're excited that the winner will win a one-of-one historic, legendary, the Alan Turing NFT of ours. So that would be pretty cool. Anyway, so back to you, JP.
I got bad news for you. You know, our typical standouts, BTC Hornet, who has an NFT, got the answer first.
That's okay. That's
and
fine.
Then
that's great.
So BTC Hornet wins. And Guardian 272 doesn't have an NFT, and he got the second place. So I defer to you on whether the true winner gets
I know
it or
Guardian. I know
on.
Guardian. BTC's great.
He said, "Yeah, okay, yes, I do."
All right,
yeah,
we'll get him one. Whatever, that's fine. Give it to the whole point is, though, you guys get these. If you already have one, give one to one of your friends, right? Or have your friend send me an email and reference you, and we'll have them fill out the form and get them one, right?
So under those rules, BTC Hornet, you're correct. He is the fastest Googler. So that's good. That's good.
He probably knew it. I mean, he's a smart guy.
Off the top of his head. You know, it's interesting. 1800s, like, I don't know. Hamilton seems like a 1600s guy, but he actually lived in the 1700s, and I guess he died in 1800s. Interesting. All right. Well,
lightning
I don't know.
round, JP. I mean, where do you want to head?
Yeah, I feel like my brain is Swiss cheese right now. After a long day of work, you know, in the future, you know, we got Dorian sitting here, well rested. I'm sure you got 10 hours of sleep like you're supposed to.
Oh, I don't think that exists in this space, but well rested is. I'd put it that way.
All right. So what we do for our special guests is we ask them lightning round questions, which is just stupid questions just to see, you know, if I can get a rise out of you, or, you know, if we can get you talking about something funny. So I did think of a question for you, and I'm going to preface it with a story. And the story is, I was at a brunch with my wife and her brother, and her brother was working on a project, and he had an artist friend at the table who was from New Zealand. And so I asked him, because I'm a huge fan of Flight of the Conchords, and I asked him, do you know Brett and Jermaine? And he got so mad at me. He's an artist too, and those guys are artists, right? Like, they're from the artist community, like we were talking about earlier. He got so mad at me. He was like, "It's really offensive that you asked me that. Everybody asked me that, and it's really offensive." And then I was like, "Well, do you know them or not?" And he goes, "Yeah, I went to school with them, and I, you know what?" So he got all mad at me, and then he ended up knowing them and the director. I forgot. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The guy starts with a T. TW, whatever his name is. Do you know Brett and Jermaine?
I do not.
Okay. Did it make you mad that I would ask you a question like that? Are you offended?
No, it's funny because that one's just, you know, that's just the classic. Yeah. No, New Zealand is a small country relative. You know, we got a lot of sheep, but not a lot of people. So, you know, it's a fair assumption for people coming from a big country, I suppose.
It was just so funny because I mean, like, he turned red in the face and was visibly offended, and then he's like, "Oh, and yeah, I know that, like, I hung out with the guy, you know, the director guy, like 2 weeks ago." It was really funny.
Yeah.
That's my lightning round question.
I do get where he's coming from. You know, like, I traveled around a bit, and you know, if you're camped out, in the States, I can imagine you get hit with it a lot.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my lightning. You got one?
No, I'm good. Dorian, this has been really helpful. I mean, I felt like he gave us a lot of detail today.
Yeah.
BTC Hornet could write a book now. I mean, he's got a lot of intel. So thank you very much for spending time with us. We've got the Seekers piece coming out very soon. Hope folks are tweeting that, following the Seekers project, following our project, and you know, many more things to come. I know we're all in build mode, and we're excited to see what happens for you guys.
Appreciate it,
guys. Dorian, thanks for any final thoughts from you? Any, you know, nuggets of wisdom? Jerry Springer, final thoughts though?
No, I think we covered a good amount. I just put out that if you're not sort of involved in our community, get involved, because we've got a lot of really interesting stuff going on. Like there's I know we go through phases of external, internal efforts, but the whole group is in build mode big time right now as well. So there's going to be some really good stuff that I think you guys are going to be happy with, that we roll out with in the coming months, which we're really excited to show off.
Yeah, and actually, one more
Awesome.
thing, JP. Folks should be downloading the app. I think if you download that Sylo app in just a few moments, you're going to really get it. I mean, I've showed a lot of people this app, the simplicity of it. It really has the light bulb go off for folks. So I really encourage that. All right.
We've also got a major update on that one coming soon as well.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, BTC Hornet just gifted his NFT to Social 2022. So Social 2022, you're the new winner.
All right, email us at nft@vaneck.com and we'll get you the form.
Yeah. All right, Dorian. Thanks